If you're over 60 and you're planning a full distance triathlon next year, there's a few things that you need to stop doing. Why do I say that? Well, the thing is that most programs that are written for folks in their 50s and 60s for long distance triathlon are actually wrong. And here's my full confession. 30 years ago when I first started triathlon coaching, I used to write programs for a lot of athletes, including those older folks in the 50s and 60s. And I never used to think about some of the challenges that they might face. Instead, I wrote a plan as if I was writing it for a 30-year-old and let them get on with it. It sort of worked, but now I'm at that age, I'm thinking, well, maybe I could have done some things differently. So, if you're one of those people, I'm going to show you in the next few minutes exactly what you should be doing to get the maximum from the time you have available, your fitness, and get you to the start line in great shape, mentally and physically. Things have changed in 30 years, obviously, not just my mindset. In 1997, at my second Ironman, there were only 14 finishers over the age of 60. That's both male and female. In 2025, almost 30 years later, there were 74 finishers. That's a five-fold increase. And what that shows you is that the 60-plus age groups, they're getting smarter and they're getting faster. And they're doing it by focusing on some of these things. The first thing they're doing is to stop trying to squeeze lots of training into the week. Instead, for as much of the time as possible, you need to keep life as normal as possible. Training should fit into your life, but not the other way around. Don't make your life fit around your training. And how do you do that? Well, here's an example of an athlete. Let's say this person, doesn't matter whether it's male or female, they're in the 60s, they do have some free time, but they also have some commitments. So the time available they have is a couple of mornings a week before work. They can get to the gym and do a run. They like to train with their club. Twice a week they go to a club session in an evening, and they also do some Swift bike racing. And then on a weekend they like to ride and they run with friends. That way they are able to carry on with their normal life, with their family commitments, with their work commitments. They have some social community for swimming, biking and running, and it fits in really nicely and sustainably, critically. And the end result of all that is that they end up creating some consistency in their training. Because the other thing that it's important to stop doing is the hero weeks. And if you don't know what hero week is, then I'm going to show you here. See this example? There's two athletes here. Athlete A, the hero, has got the light green line. And you can see there that there are some weeks when the training is up to 12, 13 hours, maybe 16 hours, but there are also weeks when there is no training at all. And the reason for that is because they've either picked up an injury or an illness, or they're just tired, and so they don't maintain any consistency. Whereas our athlete with the dark line, Mr. or Mrs. Consistent, they rarely go above 9 hours a week, apart from a couple of little spikes in there where they have made use of a holiday or a long weekend, but they very rarely go down to zero either. And after 26 weeks of training, so that's 6 months, Mr. and Mrs. Consistent have done 20 hours more training and averaged an extra just under an hour a week. Not hugely significant, except for the fact that they didn't have any of those empty weeks. And so if you watched a line of their training progressing upwards, it would be a linear line and with no interruptions. It's more like the tortoise, whereas our hero is much more like the hare, stop-start. Now, there's a saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but if you're an old dog like me, you like to learn new tricks. And I do think that statement there is a bit self-defining. If you're not open-minded enough to learn, then yeah, sure, the old dog won't learn new tricks. But if you are open-minded, then two things I would be focusing more on as I got older was swim and run technique. And for these reasons. Firstly, you'll move better. Right? You'll just feel like you're moving better, which means it's easier on an older body, which has probably accumulated a few aches and pains over the year. It reduces your injury risk, and it conserves energy on race day, which is critical in the final kilometres of that run. Now, one other thing that I know that the folks that are getting on in their age groups avoid is doing zone 4 and zone 5 training, and I think that's a mistake. There's a phrase, use it or lose it. That's really important here. We're losing muscle mass. Come back to that in a moment. With the loss of muscle mass, we're losing power. We perhaps don't do zone 4 and zone 5 training, thinking that zone 2 is better, And now all we're doing is plodding along like a diesel with no opportunity to use our power for acceleration, or no power to even accelerate. If you're on a nice flat course, that's not a problem, but if you've got hills in there, then you need to have that power. So you've got to use it now so you don't lose it, and need it more than ever as you get into your 50s and 60s. So stop avoiding zone 4 and zone 5 training. Now, I said you're losing muscle mass and power, and this is another mistake that I see here, is folks thinking, I don't have time for mobility and strength work because I've got all my swim, bike and run to do. I've been there myself, I've seen athletes, and I've heard athletes tell me that. But you should make the strength and mobility work a priority, because it helps you to build body armour, which means you can resist injury and you've got power and explosivity if you need it on race day. Plus, you never know when you might need it as part of your daily life, carrying things up the stairs, lifting things overhead. You're not always going to be an athlete, you're always going to be human, you always need that functional strength. So don't avoid mobility or strength work. And you can see here from our timetable that I've penciled in 2 gym sessions. It's an hour's workout, but there's also a 30-minute run in there. So they're spending no more than 30 minutes twice a week, and some of that will be mobility as well. And on the subject of mobility, you can do that workout when you're watching telly in the evening. Just do a little bit of stretching on the floor. It easily accumulates. So that's how you would fit it into your weekly timetable. Now, if you take a step away from training for a moment and move on to nutrition, then as an athlete, and if you've been around a while, you've probably been programmed to understand that you need to eat carbs in order to fuel the training you do, and that's right. But that overshadows one crucial factor, and that is that as you get older, you need more protein. These days, most people, not the recommended daily allowances, which are less than a gram per kilo of body weight. For athletes and for older people, I would say you need somewhere between 1.5 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. For somebody like me who weighs 80 kilos, that is a total of 160 maximum, or 120 if we're going on the bottom side. But still, you have to work on that, and you have to try and factor it in over 3 meals, because if you don't, you'll end up trying to consume too much on the other 2. So eat more protein. Now, not eating protein, it wasn't really a bad habit, but you've probably got lots of other bad habits that you developed over your life, and when you were younger, you could get away with them. Didn't mean you shouldn't have been trying to curtail them, but you could get away with them somewhat. But now, as you get older, you can't. And you probably noticed that. Things like alcohol and refined sugar, which are one of the things that you can work on reducing, impact your sleep. If you can change your diet to reduce alcohol and sugar intake, manage your stress, that will lead to better quality sleep, and then it goes the reverse way. Better quality sleep means better decision making, means better choices when it comes to food. Think about the habits you've got that are not conducive with the results you want to achieve, and see if you can make some positive changes there. Now, recovery is one of those positive changes you will get, and when you were younger, you probably hoped that recovery will just happen, but the thing is, it doesn't. Now, I bet you're all really good at tracking your training with your Garmin, on Garmin Connect, or in Training Peaks. So have you thought about tracking recovery as well? Because there are maybe some metrics there you can work on to change those lifestyle habits, or the lifestyle habits to change the benefits of your recovery and how successful your recovery is. The things I would monitor: mood is brilliant, it's subjective, you don't need any gadgets. Are you grumpy and irritable? Are you happy and smiley? One's probably telling the story you're not getting enough sleep, the other one is telling you well rested. Resting heart rate is a fairly good indicator, but even better is heart rate variability, and most gadgets these days will record that. So looking at 2 out of 3 of those on a regular basis to track how you're recovering. So the summary of all of this is that if you're thinking about training for an Ironman and you're coming up to, or you're over the age of 60, then absolutely it's possible. But there are a few guidelines that you need to follow, and you need to understand it's a long game. You need to get the basics right. You need to get good movement quality, pay attention to nutrition, pay attention to recovery. All of those will result in better consistency. And if you do that, you will get to the start line confident and cross the finish line strong. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it. Please share. please click on the subscribe button, because I'll be doing more videos in this series in the future. And look in the description of the video below, because you can see a link to download my free 6-week plan for over 60s. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.